What happened was my husband was a bricklayer, and construction was kind of up and down. And I was a stay-at-home mom. I did daycare in the house, but it wasn't enough to always make ends meet. And so we used credit card for life. Credit cards, not just one. We had a few store ones, and we had each one or two major credit cards, and we maxed them completely out.
Okay.
Well, my husband and we've been married for quite a while. I need to know that. Sorry.
I'll cut it out. Just
Okay.
my husband and I.
He was in the construction business, and I was a stay-at-home mom. I did daycare on the side once in a while. Well, actually, yeah, I did daycare on the side. But it still wasn't enough to make ends meet, because sometimes it seemed like he was working less than he could have been working. Being a bricklayer, it was all dependent on the weather and different things like that. They'd have to wait for different jobs to come up. And so we relied on our credit cards. And we didn't just have one credit card. We had, I don't know how many credit cards we had in the end. I think it was about 6 combined. And we ended up maxing them all out because we'd use them for groceries. We'd use them for anything that we wanted, things that we didn't need. And of course, we couldn't make the minimum. We made just the minimum payments every month. And the interest rates just kept piling and piling and piling up. Till one day we went to the bank, and we asked them if we could do a consolidation loan, because we knew we needed some sort of help. And they said they couldn't do anything for us, and they referred us to the Credit Counseling Society. So what happened was we got further and further into debt because we were using our credit cards for everyday life. And it gets embarrassing going to the mom and dad bank all the time too, right? So didn't want to do that, so we used our credit cards, but then we maxed them all out. Oh, almost maxed them all out.
Your husband's job, what was, how did
My husband's job, he was a bricklayer. So
So he was a bricklayer, and he was, I'm gonna help you with this, it's fine.
he was dependent on weather.
Hold on, let's start again.
Okay.
So what your husband's job?
He was a bricklayer. So he worked outside all the time. So it depended on the weather. If it was too rainy, they couldn't do their work. If it snowed, they couldn't do their work. If it was frozen up, they couldn't do any work. If they had to wait for the trade ahead of them, they were delayed as well. So they had nothing to do. So he was at home. He was a bricklayer, and so it wasn't consistent work because of different elements. So he was home more than he should have been. His job just didn't have the consistency that it should have. And I made ends meet with, or tried to make ends meet with doing daycare in my house, and tried some home-based businesses, but wasn't very good at them.
And then I'm just trying to get that sentence, it was inconsistent, so we relied on.
Okay.
So what was your job?
My husband was a bricklayer, and the work wasn't consistent. And because of that, we relied on our credit cards and ended up maxing them all out.
Perfect.
Is that better?
No, it's all good. It's just I'm editing in my mind all the time.
Oh, that's just fine. I ramble. So. When the debts became a problem, I was feeling very overwhelmed, like we could not see the end of the tunnel. I would go through every month and see what the minimums were and see which ones, because I was trying to pay off the ones with the most interest first. So I would pay a little bit more on those each month, but just the very bare minimum on the ones that were a little bit lower. But in the end, that it just ended up piling up more and more and more, because it just felt like there was just no end to this. That no matter how much I paid, it would always just not be enough to, the next month it would be the same payment plus a little more because of the interest, right? And it just felt like we weren't going to get anywhere. Yeah. It was, I think I hid from well, not from myself, but from family and friends, just kind of kept to myself because didn't want to burden anybody with my stories.
Was it with you all the time?
It was like a big shadow of following me around. It just felt like there was a big, like Eeyore, with a big black cloud over his head. And just felt that there was no hope.
When you walked out the door every morning, did you carry that debt with you?
I did. Yeah, it just felt like it was just always there. There was just no hope. There was just nothing. It was just black for me. I just felt like I just couldn't find the end of the tunnel. And every time I saw a light, it was just a train knocking me down again. So, but one day the bank phoned for where you're at money kind of thing, see where we were. And basically we had no money, but we had a lot of debt. And they referred us at that time to the Credit Counseling Society so that we could have help with this. And basically it was like the phone was like a 10-pound rock, making that a first initial phone call. But the people at the society were very, very welcoming, very understanding. Right away it was lifted because there was hope. They arranged with all the credit people that there would be no more interest rates. And we ended up we would pay them each month, and then they would distribute the money. So it was a fixed amount every month. So we could actually get ahead a little bit because we weren't nickel and diming and trying to figure out who we were going to pay that month or whatever. And the first month was really tough because it was right before Christmas. And to be honest, we returned a bunch of gifts that we were going to give, and probably some that were given to us just so that we could have a little cash at the end of the year, because the next payment was going to be coming up. And the kids were quite a bit younger then, so. But knowing that there was never going to be any more interest rates added to our accounts, it was just a big blessing. And then, so it was manageable every month. We just knew how much to budget for it each, because it was always at a certain time of the month, so that we could just budget for it, right? Because the other accounts, due dates were all over the place. And add that to rent, there would always be some that were added right at the time rent was coming out, right? But we managed. And then sadly, when my father passed away, we
Stop for a sec.
Yeah.
Just turn the camera off for a sec there. Sorry.
Am I?
What feelings do you think are associated with carrying debt?
I would say there's depression, great sadness, great a feeling of being very, very overwhelmed, that there's just no hope. That you just don't know where to turn. It just...
Do you think generally that it incurs a pressure on relationships and family?
It does. It seemed like the only conversations we would have were about money. And they weren't always pleasant conversations. But we tried to hide it from our children that we were in such bad state, or a bad state, because to have an 11, 12-year-olds, they don't need to have their parents' burdens on them. And so we kept those things, just my husband and I, because the kids are important, and we just did not want to basically share our burdens with the kids, right?
Does it change an outlook on life?
It does, because you look at other people and they seem to be managing fine. Of course, you don't know all their backgrounds and stuff, what they're going through. However, I think yeah, you just feel like everybody else can do this. Why can't I do this, right? It's just, I don't know. I just always felt like I was banging my head against the wall, if that makes any sense.
Did you, when you looked in the mirror, did it change your impression of how you were as a person?
Yeah. I laugh a lot. I'm a pretty cheerful person, but during that time, I don't remember seeing the sparkle in my eye, if you know what I mean. I just felt like I was blank, actually, kind of going through the motions of life, not really caring about anything outside of my little walls. And I just felt that there was no hope, is what it felt like. And I think I kept to myself more than I should have. The kids would go off to school and I would still be home, and I just would plant myself in the cookie jar, just because I just didn't feel like doing anything else rather that would have been productive.
Okay, good. Let's stop for a second.
I don't know.
So, what made you decide that you needed help? What happened?
At one point, we just decided that we would try to go to the bank and just see if we could consolidate all our debts into one payment. And the bank, being a corporation, they didn't want anything to really do with us. We were probably more of a burden to them than anything else. But they did refer us to the Credit Counseling Society. And through that...
Well, was that a hard decision to call credit counsel?
Yeah, the phone at first felt like it, because I was making the phone calls. I was paying the bills. It was like I was doing all the... nothing balanced at the end of the month. It all fell on my shoulders, right? Now I'm making him pay bills, so giving him his responsibility back. But the phone felt like I was using a brick to call. But they were very cheerful on the other side. They were very accommodating. The first time we went and met with our counselor, we just brought everything, all our bills, we brought all our finance stuff. I think he shook his head, I'm not sure. But he was very gracious, very kind.
Let's go back just a bit.
Okay.
You've thrown all your bills down in front of you.
Yeah.
And you're looking at your counselor, what did you think?
I think the first thing that went into our mind was, help. Can you please help us? And of course they do have, he's going, of course we do. Yeah, we didn't bring any of our credit cards. We just brought all of our bills. But in the corner, he had a planter of a rubber plant of some sort, a fake plant. And the planter is actually filled with cut up credit cards from other clients. So what they do is you bring your credit cards and you snip them all up there and you throw them into this planter. So you're getting some sort of a big relief that these credit cards are never going to bother me, or they're gone. Their part of history is gone. And we lived without credit for a few years. We started this process 5 years ago, and we've only had credit cards again for 6 months. So for 4.5 years, we had no credit cards. And life went on. We didn't need to charge everything. Because they took away all the interest rates, got them down to 0. One company left it at 1. But yeah, they take everything away. And it's just like a relief comes over you, right? So the phone stopped ringing. There was no more credit counts or creditors calling. It was just like I could breathe again.
Let's go through that. Just make it a little shorter. Tell me how you felt and once those credit cards were cut up in a real.
Okay.
Take it. No, you start on your own time. Take a deep breath. How did you really feel when those credit cards were cut up?
When those credit cards were cut up and they were thrown into the planter, it was a big sigh of relief. And it was just knowing that I am now going to have a little bit of freedom in my life, that there won't be people calling me, leaving messages anymore. Those can be very nasty from the credit card companies. And just knowing that everything was being taken care of, that I didn't have to struggle so much every month. I had to make one payment and that was all. It just was relief.
Were these first steps large steps, or were they just a series to get to where you want to get to, small steps?
Actually, it was a huge step, because reaching out for help is always a huge step, because everybody always thinks that they can do this by themselves. Excuse me. So taking that step and then coming out of the office that night, it was just like a flood of hope, or a flood of can't think of the word, but it was just relief. It was relief. It was just a huge relief. It was just a huge sigh of relief, or a flood of relief, that there was hope, that we were going to get through this. It was going to take time. We'd have to rearrange our lives a little bit, but things were going to be better. Things were going to look up, and they did.
Excellent. Good. So let's move a little bit about why are you talking to us today? Why are you sharing these feelings?
Excuse me. I'm sharing. I just want everybody to know, I want the world to know, the country to know, that right now we're living in a society where everything is wanting more, 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 more. And with that comes more debt, more pressure, more stress, more debt. And I've found through this process that you can live on less. You don't need a lot of things. You don't need the material things. But also, there's a lot, I'm living with less pressure. I'm living with more freedom. So I've given up a lot of things that I thought were important, but they're not. And when I go shopping, I always leave that credit card at home. Well, that's not true.
So if you were sitting here and I have debt and is it achievable?
It is very achievable. The first few payments are the hardest because you're just used to paying the minimum, and you're just used to paying a little bit here, a little bit there. But when you give you're giving the society the authority or the I'm not quite sure what the word is, to pay all the debts for you. Sometimes at the beginning it was a little hard to give up, but it was just, finally it was, here you go. Please just help us get through this. And my husband actually changed jobs shortly before we started this process. So maybe 8-9 months before this. And the money actually was still not there. But gradually he started, he's a bus driver now for a private company. And he started getting more and more hours. So more income was coming in. And because we were used to living at a certain level, we took that extra money each month and put it more towards the debt. So we ended up paying it off in 3.5 instead of 4.5 years. Just because the money was now, excuse me, the money was, excuse me, I don't know. I yak all day, I should be able to. It's important because I've got kids that are just starting out in their careers, and the more I talk to people, the more I see that they can benefit from what I've learned over the last 5 years. I'm very much about sharing my story and just getting my story out there, because if I can help even one person get through amount of debt, amount of hopelessness, and know that there is a future, that you can just, there's life beyond debt. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are living at the max. And if they can just glean one little tidbit from what I've learned, I don't want my children to end up in the same in the same boat that we were in. They have learned how to use their credit cards because they've seen what their parents have gone through. And, you know, nobody wants to be like their parents. So I taught them well backwards.
What do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned?
The biggest lessons I've learned is that there is hope, that you don't have to carry your burden alone. There's somebody out there that can help you, in this case, the society. But since paying off this debt, I'm off my antidepressants, I'm off my medication, any medication like that. So there is a lot. Now what you see is what you get. That didn't make sense either.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. What do you think was the hardest part of the experience?
The hardest part is asking for help. To actually start the process. Because we all think that we can just do this by ourselves. We all think that there's we just live in a society where we think that we need to achieve everything by ourselves, and asking for help is like a sign of weakness. But it ended up, what we thought was our moment of weakness ended up being our moment of strength, because now we had extra help pulling us up through the load of debt, or through the I use that word too much.
That's right.
It was like we'd gone to the rock bottom of financial wherever we were, and it was like a lifeline.
Again, that's a good start. We went to rock bottom, and
we went to rock bottom.
I was on top of you, so.
And
Sorry again.
oops, sorry, I shouldn't use my hands so much.
No,
Okay, so we were at rock.
Oh, I can't be in this sound. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Oh,
so
okay.
just take a second here. So you were at rock bottom.
We were at rock bottom. We'd hit rock bottom, and it just felt that the debt and life and just the burden of everything was piled way on top of us. And the Credit Counseling Society was actually a lifeline. It was that we could hold on to, and we could gradually get our way out of the debt.
Excellent analogy.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they pulled us along until we got to the top, and we were debt free. And
describe your feelings once you, like just before the last payment, or when you were debt free. What were the feelings?
oh, I told everybody.
Hold on, I want to change my camera. Let's stop for a second.
Sure.
So, describe your feelings. Like,
Making the last few payments was just an incredible feeling. It was, we are finished. I think I did the happy dance for like 3 hours. It was just, there's nothing that I owe to anybody now. Everything I have is mine. And it was just a feeling of yeehaw. And I think I flooded my social media accounts with everything about being debt free and doing the happy dance, and it was just relief. I think I probably lost 30 pounds just by it felt like it. Like it just felt like we're a hot air balloon or something. Just, I'm over it now. I'm done. I can see where I've been, but that's not where I am.
excellent. Okay. Perfect. That's excellent. The first thing I'm going to say, I'm going to paraphrase something to you. It's interesting is that, now that you're debt free, and this is what I feel, now you can really focus on yourself, can you? I need to get that sort of like that. So now that you're debt free.
Now that I'm debt free.
Well, let's just take it and bring it, start it right at yourself.
Start
so
at
it feels like it's coming from
you. You sound like my trainer at the gym. Get inside yourself, Dolores. Okay. Now that I'm debt free.
Well, let's start again. Take a pause. Reach down. Go ahead.
Now that I'm debt free, life is just amazing, actually.
Let's try this again because I really want to, because you did say it and paraphrase it. I want pride. Now that I'm debt free, I can, instead of focusing on my debt, I focus on myself.
Okay.
That's the kind of comment I want. So now that you're debt free, how do you feel?
Now that I'm debt free, I feel amazing. I feel like I can do whatever I want. I'm not limited.
Use the phrase focus on me.
I can just focus on me. What I've done actually is I started going to the gym. I got myself a personal trainer. I'm just confident and I'm just have a lot of inner confidence that no matter what happens, I can get through. I can get through hardships again. Knowing what rock bottom feels like, knowing what a lifeline feels like, I know I can just be that lifeline for someone else. It's given me a lot of freedom actually to be debt free because I have put for years and years everybody else in front of myself. And now it's just my time to focus on myself, find my interests again, and just be who I want to be. And I don't need a credit card to do that.
Excellent. That's that. Jeff,
sure.
Do you think there's a stigma about debt that people carry?
Yeah, I think that there is. People don't want anybody to know that they're in debt. They want to show off their new car, but they don't want to show off their stack of bills. That didn't make sense.
Well, it does make a lot of sense. I'm just keep talking.
Because okay, I'll ramble and then we can tighten it up.
Is there a stigma about
there is a real stigma about debt.
Let's start again, just because I think I was over your words. Go ahead.
There's a real stigma about being in debt because it's not something you want to flaunt. It's not something you want people to know about. People hide behind it. It's like a mask or it's like a mask. People hide behind their debt. So with that, they hide behind their feelings. I would smile a lot, but I wasn't a happy person. I hid behind my smile was tears, was frustration, was depression, overwhelming sadness. But I didn't want people to know that. And so, yeah, I think there a lot of people out there are doing what I was doing, just keeping it all inside and putting on a fake front.
If you had advice, and this is your last one, and you're talking to Canadians, what is your advice?
My advice to you is don't take on more than you can handle. more debt than you can handle. Leave the credit card at home or cut it up. I know it's hard. I know it's hard being in debt. I know what rock bottom feels like. I know what the top of the world feels like. My advice is if you've hit rock bottom and you're just feeling like you're overwhelmed by all your credit card debt or whatever it may be, find help. 'Cause one little lifeline, all you need is to hold on to that little hook and they will help you up. I know it feels really hard, or it feels, it's overwhelming. It's not easy to, you don't want people to know that you're in debt, so you hide it. But once you stop hiding your debt and your feelings, there's a sense of relief that comes over you right away. And don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the biggest thing, is just don't be afraid to ask for help from whoever it may be, and just reach out. The hardest thing might be to just lift your arm to get out that extra help, but it's so worth it. You can, if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it.
Excellent. We're done.